This was good. Okay, so actually he discusses a lot of factors that contributed to European colonialism. It was not something that started in the 1990s, the 1900s, but it actually started to take off once industrialization started to take off. Mechanization enabled, for example, people to get really inland. I mean, before that, the Europeans were not capable, for example, of colonializing Africa because they didn't have the means and they were not resistant to diseases. So it was very difficult to get inside Africa. So they needed something like of a breakthrough, and that came in the shape of a steamship and also
Do they need
guns.
mineral, right?
Yes, resources. Resources is a very important driver for colonialism, but also behind World War II, as we will see. I mean, that was one of the major reasons why World War II happened. Access
Major
to
reason for
resources.
colonialization is they are looking for mineral resources.
Right, but not only minerals, also food.
Food?
Food.
Eating food?
Well, yeah, for eating food. Like take for example, why did Japan go to Manchuria? I mean, that was basically because there were too many Japanese in a small country, and they needed farmland, and therefore they started to develop Manchuria. Food, resources in all kinds of shapes and forms. Another important element was of colonialization was economic colonialization. A very common strategy, economic integration with the colonialized power, and then waiting for their weaker economies to collapse and then take control over their national resources. That happened a lot, of course. If you look at the map today, if you look at the world around us, that you will see that most of the countries that have most of the resources actually are the poorest countries in the world. Why? Because basically they have become fallen victim to colonialist powers who actually took control over all their natural resources and kept the countries under control through a strategy of divide and rule, which usually means that the imperialist power actually collaborates with local leaders, preferably the minority leaders, not the majority, but the minority, the fewer people that you need to keep under control as an imperial country. The cheaper it is, the more effective it is. That's why you see all kinds of conflicts still today, like the Hutus and the Tutsis. Is a conflict that was basically born out of an imperial history where the Tutsis were actually collaborating with the imperialist power and put in positions that they held on to after the country became independent, which led to an uprising because the majority Hutus did not go for that. I mean, they
talking
were
about
not.
Congo?
I'm talking about Rwanda.
Rwanda.
But the same thing is true in Nigeria, for example, and in a lot of other countries where, well, for example, let's take Indonesia from the Netherlands. There is a lot of friction between the Chinese, who worked closely with the Dutch, as well as the Molucca people. They were fierce warriors, and they were fighting along with the Dutch to keep Indonesia under control. But when the Dutch left, basically they had a lot of enemies. So that kind of internal conflict that was created and actually nurtured to keep these countries under control, basically destabilizing them at the core.
Edo-san, I have a question.
Hmm.
I think there is two types of the colonialism.
Right.
One is before Industrial Revolution.
Mm.
The other is after Industrial Revolution. Before Industrial Revolution, typically Spanish and Portuguese.
Right.
And after Industrial Revolution, typically England. I think there's a big difference because former type Spanish and Portuguese use many human resource export to Africa to South America.
Yes.
But England don't export Africa to South America. How about the impression?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And don't forget the French. They also had a very sizable colonial empire. Not only in West Africa, but also in Southeast Asia. So their influence that stretched very far. And a lot of it, like I remember when we talked about Indochina, there were only about 15,000 French in the entire Indochina. He said there were in India there were only 1,000 administrative workers from the UK who actually managed to control the entire country of India, which is ridiculous, of course, which is ridiculous. But that is just a matter of divide and rule. Basically, you give them a carrot and you have the stick. That once they start to revolt against you, they're probably the colonialist country has the superior means to actually win a war. So the threat of war is the stick, and the carrot is actually basically, well, if we play nice, I'll give you some advantages. So they let the local rulers keep their position in, but as long as they pledge alliance to the empire, to the British Empire.
He's talking about like South Africa. They have two phases of colonialization. First phase from not the British.
Right, Portuguese and
those people, many people moved to South Africa for they start for farming, right?
That was more the Dutch and the British. I think when he was talking about the Portuguese, basically Africa was not so interesting at that time. It was more necessary for the Europeans who were on their way to Southeast Asia for the spices. That's where the money was.
But at that time, why European people, first colonialization period, why those European people moving to Africa?
Basically because they needed to get
for living.
No, well, but actually it was to put fresh food and drinking water on the ships that would pass the Cape of Good Hope on the way to Southeast Asia.
But many people lived there.
Quite a few people lived there, but not that many. But they were just living in the around the ocean near Cape of Good Hope. There were farmers there, but it was not that of big scale. It was not like they were trying to control it. They just set up some farms there, and they grew their products, and they would provide them to the ships that were passing them, because those. It took a long time to get from Europe to Southeast Asia. And if you didn't have fresh fruit, for example, you get something like in the Netherlands we call it scheurbuik. People would actually get diseases because they didn't have enough vitamin C. So they needed fresh produce. That's why after they would pass South Africa, it would take a long time before they reached India, right? So they needed to actually restock. So they needed to have a place where they could go ashore safely and they could actually get some new stock. So there were some farmers that were put there, and they would just grow their food and make their money just growing the local produce. Now that was the Dutch people who moved there initially. Then later on the British came and they wanted to colonialize South Africa. They wanted to establish their influence there. So the boeren, which is the Dutch, the boeren. That just means no björnistal. In Dutch farmers, boeren. They fought against the British, but the British eventually won. So it is a lot of management, and I know you're very interested in how come they managed to control it so well. It is really by having the superior technology, having the superior means also, like the economic imperialism is very important, a very important role, why a lot of countries actually manage to destabilize. So first you win the war, then you try to control the country that you conquered as efficient as possible through divide and rule. You collaborate with the leaders who do not have such deep pockets, and because there is only a smaller group who is effectively controlling the entire country, then they also have less potential to actually do that very well. Therefore, when they get in trouble, you bail them out, and you take control over all the natural resources and actually further extend your power.
はい、皆さんこんにちは、雲野です。今日はですね、雲野塾の研修のプログラムをご紹介したいと思います。で、こういうふうなホームページありますけれども、ぜひですね、一度中身をご覧になっていただきたいと思います。今日は VCube さんのスタジオに来て、この収録をしておりますので、中身はこういうふうになってて、今最近ホットなね、グローバルリーダーの定義など書いてあります。で、特に経団連が作成しました留学すれば英語ができて専門性を持つというだけではですね、グローバルリーダーになれないとここに書いてありますようにですね、仕事ができる、専門性を持つ、英語ができるだけじゃなくてですね、私どもの塾ではリベラルアーツということと、それからもう一つは孫子の兵を、さらにはですね、日本の歴史というものを合わせて教えることによって、皆さんが海外の欧米の方々と、もしくは華僑圏の方々と正々堂々と渡り合えるような人物を育成しようというふうなことを考えています。ここに次のスライドが出ておりますけれども、ここに書いてありますのはですね、さらに、私どもの雲野塾の中身につきましてはですね、欧米の資料しか使っておりません。また実際に雲野塾は英語でやっておりますので、英語の講師がこう話しておりますけど、学習はですね、日本の歴史をまだ教えてますので、学習の午後はですね、日本のプログラムをしております。で、以前はこれ有料だったので、今はですね、実際に会場費も取っていただいておりませんで、毎回5000円ということで、朝9時から午後5時までやっておりますので、ぜひ皆さんですね、ご検討の上ご参加いただければと。英語のできない方もですね、学習の午後こういうふうな研修をしておりますので、ぜひご参加いただければというふうに思っておりますので、よろしくお願いします。で、ここにさらにですね、グループ討議とか実務の勘どころを教えると書いてありますけど、実際には私が10年ほどですね、欧米の新聞とか雑誌等をですね、集めてきた、もともと英語のベースでございますので、そうしたものをですね、50セッションのテーマに分けて資料作成しております。そういうことで、世界のオペレーション、もしくはカントリーリスクも含めてですね、しかも世界のトップの方々に対してもいろいろな分析とか洞察をしてですね、議論をしております。そういったことも含めてですね、今後ともよろしくお願いしたいと思います。以上で私の挨拶を終えますが、今回のこのビデオの収録にあたってはですね、VCube さんのスタジオをお借りしてですね、お時間を頂戴して、このビデオを作成させていただきました。よろしくお願いします。どうもありがとうございました。